War.
What is it good for? Absolutely never said war.
When we talk about war, there's a big focus on how things got started. This is why we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about the road to the Civil War. But when we talk about wars starting, it's also important to talk about the first bloodshed, the first official battle of a war. And for the Civil War, this battle was Fort Sumter. Earlier this week, we started learning about Southern states and how they seceded from the Union, how they left the United States. The problem with this is that the United States didn't formally recognize these seceding states as their own country. The United States didn't see the Confederacy as a sovereign nation. So, if I went into the middle of Red Lion and I planted a flag, and I now declared all of Red Lion to be the Republic of Rasa, that doesn't make it a real country. The United States would just ignore my flag, and everything would go on as normal. My flag doesn't automatically mean that everyone in Red Lion is now a member of my country. They are now Rasaites? Rassish? Rassasian? Raisins. Side note, but my country's citizens are now called raisins. I'm getting off track here. What I'm trying to show you is that when the Southern states seceded, the United States thought, oh, that's cute. You're not really your own country, though. You're still part of the United States. You're just going through a rebellious phase. It's not a phase, Mom. A lot of Southerners did view themselves as part of this new country. So, back to my example, that would be like if everyone in Red Lion said, you know what? Yeah, we are part of the Republic of Rasa. We are raisins. We are members of this new country. The United States still might not think my country is legit, but at least I got you guys with me, and that makes things a little bit more serious. Back to the South. In the South, there are tons of forts and federal buildings that are technically part of the United States, but these lands are being claimed by the Confederacy now. So they are being absorbed by this new ruling power. One fort in particular, Fort Sumter, was not going to accept Confederate rule, though. Fort Sumter was off the coast of South Carolina, near the city of Charleston. If you recall, South Carolina was the first state to officially secede from the Union. They started the trend. Well, the fine folks who were stationed at this fort were not just going to surrender to Confederate rule. They still considered themselves to be American soldiers, not Confederate soldiers. But now they're a long way away from their friends up north. The South wants this fort, because, obviously, they consider it theirs. It's in South Carolina, a Confederate state. So, bada bing, bada boom, this fort should now be a Confederate possession, right? Well, these troops were not going to give the fort up. Again, they were a long way from home. And as you can see, this fort is basically an island. So they're surrounded by the enemy, and they have no way of getting food and supplies. They're kind of stuck there. Abraham Lincoln, who didn't want to see these soldiers starve to death, decided that he was going to send ships with supplies on them to feed these soldiers. He gave South Carolina a heads up. He said, hey, I'm sending some boats through just to give my people some food. Don't worry about it. And South Carolina did worry about it. They responded by just kind of going ahead and attacking the fort. From the harbor, the Confederate forces bombarded this fort for 34 hours. This bombardment officially ended when Union troops evacuated the fort, and thus surrendering. The Confederates took this fort, and we consider this to be the first battle of the American Civil War. Now, interestingly enough, no one died in this battle. Even though the fort was bombarded for 34 solid hours, there was no casualties on either side. But this bloodless battle would mark the beginning of the bloodiest war in American history. Following this surrender, Lincoln started rallying troops so we could recapture these southern lands. Lincoln asked that men volunteer for battle, but he quickly found that he got mixed responses. Some states, like Ohio, had many people volunteer to stop this rebellion. But some border states, like Missouri and Kentucky, refused to cooperate. As more and more states sided with the South, and 4 more states formally seceded from the Union, it became clear that this wasn't just a small-scale rebellion. We were entering a full-out war. It seemed like everyone very quickly picked their sides. Lincoln found this out the hard way. After he gathered all these troops, he picked Robert E. Lee to be the commander of this army. But Lee refused to do the job. He was from Virginia, so he decided to side with the Confederacy. Lee would eventually become the Confederacy's most famous general. Suddenly, things just got real, and we're at war with our own country. We consider the bombardment of Fort Sumter to be the first battle of the American Civil War. But I would argue that America has already been at war with itself for a while now. We saw violence happening all over the country. In Kansas, at Harper's Ferry, in Washington, D.C., and any place in which people are enslaved. There was violence and bloodshed already. But with the official rallying of these northern troops, we can finally call this mess a war. Friends, that's it for today. Starting next week, Mr. Kilmoyer is going to take back over, and he's going to guide you through the rest of this Civil War. This is the last lesson that I will be presenting to you guys. Next week, I graduate from college. Please watch my goodbye video where I wrap everything up and leave you guys with some final thoughts. All right, friends, goodbye.